Well, good evening, everybody. Another look at a Ericozy video. You never grow tired of watching and listening to the dude. That that was his. Obviously, he was very popular for a reason, and that is that everybody enjoyed, waking up to an Ericozy video, or catching him live, which occasionally I was able to do, particularly on a Friday, if he finished at say 1:30 in the afternoon, he might get home for sort of 2:30, 8 hours ahead. So 10:30, 11 o'clock. If he did a live presentation at 11 o'clock in the evening on a Friday, I was able to tune in then. But here's a video that he presented. Just before we get onto that, I've set it as a premiere for 6 o'clock, so just about an hour's time for the UK, and I'll set this one for just before then, and 7 o'clock for Juris over there in the Netherlands. I'd like to thank him very much for coming along and having a chat with me about things, and just to let you know of an event tomorrow that Jane Sharp is organizing, Sharper Than the Pencil. She's calling it a Keep Talking Till They're Walking debriefing, which is quite a nice title. And so that's scheduled to kick off at 9 o'clock UK time. 9 o'clock in the evening is 3 o'clock in the afternoon for Wisconsinites, and obviously it's about 6 o'clock in the morning for Australians, but maybe we'll be able to get one or two on later on, and about the 10 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning over there in the land of Oz. Anyway, let's without any further ado, let's go and have a look at this this video of Ericozy's. It says it's from about 2 years ago, but of course that could be anywhere between 2 and 3 years ago. So sometimes I'm not always to tell how long ago it is. We might get a clue from the subject matter. So that should be it. Yeah, that's looking good. I'm just going to reduce me down in size, put me up at the top there, and do that, and click on.
Key, how do you pay a bill for someone you owe 36 million? You don't, it might as well be a gajillion. Oh, this is what you do. You charge the one you owe with murder, the debt goes to.
Hello everybody, this is Ericozy on Making a Murderer on YouTube. I cover the Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey cases, but also as time passes I've been covering other cases such as the Staircase or OJ and many wrongful convictions of youth. I go over the documents, the photos, the videos, anything case related, so stay tuned because I have many more videos just like the one you're about to see. How you doing everybody? We're here today to talk a little bit about the fact that Zellner filed for an extension on the appellate brief regarding the Brady violation of the CD that was held in Tom Fassbender's personal custody. For those of you who are just tuning back in for MAM2, yes, his own personal custody, not in an evidence storage locker somewhere, but in his own personal custody for 12 years. Anyway, so obviously that was denied by Judge Sukowicz over there in Wisconsin, in the district court. So now she was going to be due to file her appellant brief very soon. She filed for an extension. It's now been moved to December 20th. So that's one thing we're going to be talking about. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the blood evidence in the Avery case after we talk a little bit about the extension to December 20th. So what we're gonna go ahead and talk about is, I think it's actually interesting. She filed for this extension and it now puts the due date for this brief at December 20th. Because, and this is why it kind of, it may not amount to anything, but here's my kind of thinking. This brief is going to be filed with them right before Christmas in a similar way that the prosecution filed, the Fassbender report and the 7 DVDs, right? Right before Christmas. December, I think 7th on the Fassbender report, and December 14th on the DVDs, right? So just before Christmas, an entire hard drive to review, and a hard drive that has not been represented as the Dassey computer, but as Brendan's computer. The prosecution was claiming it was solely Brendan's computer, and so this evidence was being misrepresented in many ways, and although the prosecution had it for 8 months, they handed it over literally 3 weeks before the Denny was due, and it makes a big huge conflict, because this evidence would have allowed Stephen's lawyers to meet the high threshold of Denny that Judge Willis had set in this case. And that is, they would have been able to provide a motive for somebody, one of their third-party suspects, and that would have created further doubt for the jury. Theoretically, most likely, probably, right? You always never know exactly how things will play out in court, but pretty much, generally speaking, if there would have been another suspect to point at that was plausible, that had motive and all those things, they're like, well, Stephen didn't even have motive, right? The prosecution was going after him without motive. But if they had a suspect that had motive and all that, all three things, then that would have certainly probably created some doubt for the jurors. And we know that the initial vote in the juror room, from somebody that was there, that it originally went like 7 not guilty, 3 guilty, and 2 undecided, or something like that. Something like that. And so we know that was the initial vote. And if there had been another suspect to consider, you got to imagine the jury might have been a little bit less willing to convict. So that's why this CD that was hidden, and the way that the way that the prosecution was handing this information over. The reason why the CD is so important is because the prosecution didn't hand over the CD to the defense, because the CD would have indicated to them exactly what was on that computer and how alarming it was, and they didn't want that. They were hoping to slip it under the radar. And if they handed over the CD, that would have been easily reviewable by anybody. Just pop it into a computer. It's like basically a PDF format that pretty much any Windows computer pretty much comes with, standard, right? They would have been able to pop that in, open up a file, and go, holy moly, what is on this computer? And then they would have seen some of the forensic work, some of the initial forensic work that was done by Veely, the guy who originally did the forensic, analysis of the Dassey computer, which the prosecution had for 8 months before handing it over, 3 weeks before Denny was due. They would have immediately been able to see that there was something there, and that it was of consequence, and that it was important. And that's why the CD was in Tom Fassbender's personal custody for 12 years. For those of you coming in, like I said, heard about MAM2 and typed it into a YouTube search, that's what's kind of happening right now. So there was going to be an appellant brief due from Kathleen Zellner within a couple days, I believe. But that has now been extended to December 20th. So I think it's interesting, because being due there, those judges might be, as they're wanting to be home or wanting to be spending more time with their families while they're probably working a lot on the holidays and stuff, and wishing they could be going and having and doing some of the fun things, or more fun things, I should say. But they're obviously they probably take their work home with them and stuff, and try to get some work done, over the holidays and stuff like that. But I'm hoping that that it's one of the briefs they're going to be reading, and that they'll be thinking about that, and how that evidence was turned over, and how the CD was important, and why it was held aside and in Tom Fassbender's personal custody for 12 years. And exactly, it's just, hopefully the fact that it is the holiday season will make all of those facts resonate just a little bit more with the appellate judges, and that's kind of what I'm hoping for. And it may not, but let's hope. The spirit of the holiday season, let's hope, So, now, the second thing I wanted to talk about today, and that is well, to be perfectly honest, it's the most convincing piece of evidence against Stephen Avery. And that is the blood in the RAV4. That's what we're going to talk about. So, the reason why I want to talk about it is because the blood in the RAV4 is extremely odd. Even though, like I said, even though it's the strongest piece of evidence against Stephen, it's just still very odd. It's just really, really strange. And the reason why that is because it's only 6 drops and some blood mashed into a CD case somehow or whatever. I don't know how, but whatever. As if somebody was just sitting there rubbing their bloody finger or bloody something, just rubbing it on this thing for no reason. I mean, I can't imagine any reason why Stephen would have needed to handle that CD case, if he was doing this, supposedly, for any amount of time to leave that much of smears of blood on it. He would have picked it up and tossed it out of his way if it was in his way, and that's about it. I don't believe he was... I find it hard to believe he was sitting there checking out her CDs while he's in the middle of everything else that he's doing. It just seems a little bit, stretch. So it's just odd that there's so much blood mashed onto that thing. But then you got the fact there's only a couple drops, and then you got the drops in these really odd places, like, for instance, in the rear passenger door jamb. What the heck? And why is it not around the driver's seat area and things that you would touch when you were driving the RAV4, right? Why is it not there? So, and I understand that some people out there have the theory about if he was wearing gloves, and what if the gloves and him got cut, or by what, blah, 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 and yeah, okay, maybe. I just don't see Stephen as a guy who would ever put on a pair of gloves for any reason whatsoever. Yeah. And the other thing is if he was wearing gloves, he wouldn't have been able to deposit non-DNA evidence on the hood latch. Non-blood DNA evidence on the hood latch. So it's very distinctively not blood on the hood latch. So in order for him to leave that, he couldn't have been wearing gloves. So unless you're, adding to the whole, Zellner's idiot savant narrative from her original filing for post-conviction relief, and unless you're just adding to that comedy of errors, that she's pointing out, and adding the fact that Stephen's just idiot savant, wore gloves, but then got a cut, and then took the gloves off to open up the hood, and but didn't leave any of his fingerprints on the hood or anywhere. Right? It's just it strains credulity. Oh, yeah, I love that word. Thank you, Mr. Berg from Wisconsin. I just love using that. It's a great phrase. Yeah, certainly strains credulity, because, okay, if he takes those gloves off and he's opening the hood, why aren't his fingerprints there? So, like I said, there's all kinds of problems with the evidence in the RAV4 and why it doesn't work. Since I brought up the hood latch, I'll bring up the fact that they found 1.9 nanograms of DNA on the hood latch, which is about 90 times more than what is deposited when you open it. They did a test. They tested DNA. And they tested people's DNA from opening the hood latch, right? And only 4 out of 15 people even left measurable DNA, and the measurable DNA that those 4 people left was literally, you would have to times it by 90 to get the amount that they're trying to say that Stephen left on the hood latch. So that's just another issue with the evidence of the RAV4. But back to the blood. What I'm going to show you right now is another crime where a car was used and the supposed killer was driving it. And we're going to see how the blood turns out there. The key word I'm going to be using probably here a lot is genuine. What looks genuine. And certainly when we look at the pictures that we're going to look at first of a different car than the RAV4, we're going to see how the blood came out in that car. And then you're going to see over on the passenger side where it looks like somebody leaned up against the console, like their arm was bloody and they leaned up against a console. And so the blood looks like it was left there genuinely. It doesn't look like somebody was just in there with an eyedropper and then mashed some into a CD case and then took a Q-tip and put some over by the ignition. Anyway, about 3.5 inches away from it though. To be perfectly honest, but anyways, yes, there's that little squiggle that doesn't make any darn sense. So that's what you got. So it's like, it's not in the places where you would expect it to be, like on the gear shifter, like the transmission shifter, I should say, not around the ignition or anything like that where his supposed bleeding finger was, right? None there, not on the steering wheel, not in anything, around that driver's area, except there was some, like, I think right on the seat, maybe there was like a drop. I mean, if he's touching things, he's going to be leaving touch, blood patterns or blood spatter or whatever. He's going to be leaving, he's like where he's touching it onto the surface essentially. I don't understand why there's so many drops. It's just weird. It's strange. Anyways, we're going to look at right now OJ's Bronco, and we're going to see what the blood looked like in there. All right, so this is OJ's Ford Bronco, okay? This is how the blood looks in OJ's Ford Bronco. I did a video, about this, of course, and I'll leave the link below, but comparing the Avery case and the OJ cases, and this is one of the things I compared, because look at this blood, okay? This is how blood would get deposited by people riding in a car, or somebody driving in a car, or whatever. It's like their arm was bloody and leaned up against the center console, or their elbow or something over here. Like, it looks like it was deposited in a real way. In a probable, like a believable way, a plausible way, right? So this is some of the blood over here on the passenger side of the Bronco, right? And now we'll move over to the driver's side so you can see how authentic looking the blood is on that side. Okay, so this is the driver's side of OJ's Bronco, okay? You see all these Post-its, right? Over here and here, and there's even one over here on the gear shift, I believe. So, which makes sense, honestly. I don't know why there wasn't blood on the gear shift in the RAV, personally. If Steven did this, it's hard to explain how there's not blood there. Some on the seat here, but look at steering wheel. Of course, something that you would be touching a lot if you were in there, right? Okay. Over here on the dash, maybe it was hot and he was angling the air conditioning vent towards himself or something maybe. So there's a little bit here somewhere. And then, well, we know that the Bruno Mali shoes walked through the blood. So there's, tags down here on the floor from walking through the blood. Now, remember that this was supposedly this bloody scene of a rape and stabbing and all this throat slitting and all these things. So Avery would have been most likely covered in a hell of a lot of blood too if he did this. And he would have, left a comparable amount of blood in the RAV as you see that OJ clearly left here in the Bronco. So this is my issue with the RAV4, the blood in the RAV4. I concede to those who believe Stephen Avery is guilty that it is the strongest piece of evidence against Stephen Avery. It absolutely is. But having said that, it's still strange. It's just not. It's strange when you look at this, where the blood ends up is all plausible and makes more sense. But where it is in the Avery case is just strange. Like there's a drop over in the door jamb of the back passenger door, the rear passenger door. There's like it's like dripped. It's like drops, in the car. Then there's the little squiggle by the ignition, and it's like whoever was. It's like it seems as though somebody who was planting this blood kind of didn't have much, and just took whatever it was they had left after they had dripped as much of it they could drip, whatever 6 drops that they managed to drip, right? And maybe they just mashed it onto that CD case or whatever, and that's why it's just like all smeared onto the CD case, just getting as much of it in there, in the RAV as possible, and not really caring about what it looked like and whether or not it would look authentic. So this is just the point I make about the blood. I mean, here you see, you saw the passenger side where you saw the blood, where it looked like somebody leaned up against the center console. You see where the blood ended up here on the driver's side of the Bronco. And then you think about the way the blood ended up in the RAV. Such a tiny amount, like 6 drops, and it's like all drops except for the smear on the CD case and the little squiggle over by the ignition. And it just seems like somebody had a very small amount of Stephen's blood and was trying to implicate him. But as I say, the blood is the strongest piece of evidence against Stephen Avery. It's just still less than convincing. So hopefully you see there what I mean by what seems and looks genuine or authentic, right? So that is not what you get with the RAV4. And I know most of you watched MEM, when you think of that squiggle by the ignition, kind of by the ignition, but not really anywhere near the ignition, which is odd. But none actually on the ignition, which is on the steering column. No blood there. The blood in the RAV4 is odd. That's hands down. That's the one thing that's odd about the Avery case in comparing the RAV4 to what happened with the Bronco and where the blood ended up in the Bronco. But there was one other thing about the OJ case that helped it all make sense, right? And that was because there was an actual scene where this all took place. We have with OJ an actual crime scene where we can see that a crime took place and we know where it took place and it can be analyzed, because we certainly don't have that in the Avery case. And the reason why I bring that up is because it's supposedly supposed to be as bloody and gruesome as that on Bundy, supposedly. That what Avery did to Teresa, according to the state's narrative, the prosecution, right? It's supposed to be every bit as bad as that. There's no way that Stephen cleaned up with a rug doctor in bleach. Okay? If he had, he would have sections of faded carpet where he was working hard to get the blood out of it with the bleach, and he would have sections of carpet that were still very dark and vibrant. All the carpet in there looks pretty much the same, and it doesn't look like it was bleached because it still looks brown. If he had used bleach and a rug doctor, all the carpet in there would look pretty much white. Anyway, so that didn't happen. Where did it happen? Where did it take place? I don't think they ever found out. They were just too desperate to make the lawsuit go away, or at least certain individuals were, and that's why the evidence got pointed at Avery. But at least in my opinion, because that's looking through everything, look at all the shifty things that the state was doing in this case. One of the things you heard me talking about at the beginning of this video, with Tom Fassbender holding a CD in his own personal custody for 12 years. And I mean, it's just nuts, dude. The whole everything that goes on in this case, the state, it's just nutty. It's absolutely nutty. So for those of you coming into MAM2 or coming back for MAM2 and stuff, yeah, there's a lot to catch up on. It's all pretty crazy. And my channel will help if that's what you want. I have about over 300 videos. Many of them are about making a murder. Some of them are about other things, other cases, and stuff like that. But many of them are about Stephen and Brendan. So anyways, if you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you.
I mean, that's who's he calling dude? Is he calling everybody else dude? He's the dude. Okay, that's what we call him. That, or his duda, or El Duderino, or his dudeness. Anyway, great to see these videos of Eric Jose. It's just his whole style is pretty. It's it's not sort of in your face. There's a conservatism about the dude, which once sadly he passed away, we heard a bit more about. Yes, I was aware of that, but um, uh, it's that's just great to watch the dude talking about this stuff. And yes, he was very much into the O.J. Simpson case and the parallels between the blood evidence. Yeah. Where's all this where's all this blood? You know, the cops arrive on the Thursday, and Steve just says, "Yeah, just go and help yourself. Have a look in the caravan. I'll just stay with Mum. You go and have a look." There should have been blood everywhere. In the garage, in the bedroom, everywhere. Outside where they've dragged her outside. It should be in the hallway. It should be everywhere, and it ain't. Anyway, I'm going to say cheerio, and I'll set this for. It'll probably be after now. Yes, it will be after the chat with Juries. I'll set it for maybe 2 or 3 hours time. Okay, thanks again. We'll see you all again soon. Bye for now.